Okay. Well, Brian, as you can see, we have this call with our acquisition entrepreneurs, right? So we expect to have probably 10 to 20 people joining every week to learn, discuss, ask questions, hear about different topics that will help them not only through their acquisition process, but after that, post-closing, to have better understanding of the keys to growth. For which last week we had Mark, and next week we will have Tat to talk about people and culture. So thank you very much for joining. And everyone, this is Brian Stroh that I would like to introduce. Brian works as Vice President of Operations for Snowball Industries. Snowball Industries, the work they do is pretty much support target companies that are meant to integrate, right, or roll up into Snowball, with their platform for growth. And in a similar way, at Acquire, we'll do some same type of support in the same three main components and a strategy for growth for acquired companies that are not target to roll up to a Snowball. Okay. So we received some questions. Brian has those, but pretty much this time is for you to ask questions about operations. What aspects are key? Perhaps 10%, I will say, to keep in mind during the process of selecting a company, going through the due diligence, but 90% or 80%, I would like this conversation to also touch what are keys when I have already acquired a company and I need to see the operations, in a good situation for growth. So we can talk about, metrics, we can talk about, processes, many things that are critical. Brian has, great experience, and he'll be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, as best I can. We can go through some of the questions I've got on here. Do you want me to kind of go through a couple of those as I see them show up on here, just to kind of roll some things?
Yeah,
and some people
have a question. Yeah, that'll be perfect. Brian, what are the three most important operational tasks for a new owner who has just acquired the business?
I would say, at least the way that I look at it from a consultant side, that was kind of my previous life for a while. I think it's important to go in and make sure that you interview everybody, every employee that you got at that business, and I mean everybody. I'd like to actually start with the people that have been here the shortest period of time first, because I'm interested to understand what their perspective is on the operation, what they see. They may not necessarily be indoctrinated into the current culture. They may have just come from someplace that's competition or some other industry. They might have some unique perspectives and insight onto what they see going on there. I'm not looking to steer the conversation. I'm just looking to gather information. And then I move up the food chain to the more senior individuals, and lastly, kind of the executive positions, in which place I'll share some of those insights that I've heard that have gone on. I really think that's the most important thing you can do to start. Number one for me, it's really to get a pulse on culture first and foremost. And I know that may not sound like an operational endeavor, but it's paramount to success. If you don't have a good gauge on what's happening there culturally, your processes, your procedures, your operational efficiencies, your metrics, all those types of things are just going to be severely hampered by lack of a common culture there. I think that's one of the things that you see being an overriding issue for companies across the board, is they have cultural issues. And I really believe that's something you just have to do first and foremost, to really get your finger on the pulse of what's going on with that business.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Brian. I like to ask a question, like, for example, what do you like? What do you like about the current ownership or, management. And the things they like will tell a lot about the culture of the company. Probably they will omit some other things that you can definitely touch. But then you start the conversation, in a positive tone, right?
Yeah. What do we do well? What do we do well here?
Mm-hmm.
What
Okay.
could we improve on? Not what don't we do well? What could we improve on?
Right.
What opportunities do you see here? And
Okay.
those are important. I mean, even for that entry level, you got a 22-year-old kid that's been working there washing trucks for 6 weeks. I want to know what he has to say. It's interesting to me because he's hearing things and seeing things that might surprise you. So it doesn't matter what the position is. I want to take the time to actually go through and ask those types of questions and find out, what is the general consensus here? What are the thoughts? What are we doing well? What do we need to work on? What are our opportunities? By the time I'm done with that, depending on the size of the company, after a few days of doing this, I've got a real good gauge of what we need to work on.
And how do you recommend to have those conversations, like the level of formality? Because some of them are, kind of hands-on, and if you call them to the office, you're going to disrupt, their daily activities. What do you suggest?
And to be as informal, really, I find it to be as informal as possible because it relaxes the conversation. Anybody seen the movie Office Space, right? Where you come in, we like to fire people on Fridays. That consultants, everybody's got that. Hey, as you come in, new owner, whatever's going on, go out there and catch these guys as they're out and work. Do you have 5 minutes? You got 10 minutes? Introduce yourself. I'm just interested to know, what are your thoughts? I'm trying to learn what's going on here. Really excited about what we've got, but I need some insight onto what's happening here. How long you've been here? Tell me your thoughts. What do we do well? What do we need improvement on? And some of those conversations end up running out to half an hour. Now I'm going to cap them. You get people that really like to talk, but I'm interested in all that insight, and I'm going to keep it as informal as possible. As I move up the food chain and I get more to those more senior positions, that's going to be more kind of a behind closed doors because there might be some more sensitive information that's shared. And I'm also going to, the questions are going to change. I'm also going to address, after I've asked some of these questions and got their opinion without any advice that I put out there, I'm going to address, a couple of things I've heard is, would you agree with? And then I'll start to phrase some of that a little bit differently. In the end, when I get to the very top and I'm dealing with the GM or the owner at that point in time, I'm going to ask the same questions, but I'm then going to expand on things because I'm going to have talked to everybody in the company at that point in time. I got a real good idea about what's going on. I may have a much clearer idea of what's going on than he does or she does at that point in time.
Yeah. Could I ask something really quick, Daniel? I'm thinking too, culture is a big part of it. And we talk about negotiations with the seller, more post LOI due diligence, site visits. How much of this culture and these questions and this, uncovering of the business can be found in your post LOI due diligence before you acquire the business? What has been your experience on that?
For me, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just some information.
Trying to achieve the same before acquisition is complete.
That can be difficult because it's dependent upon what that acquisition looks like, right? If you got a situation where the owner says, I haven't said anything to anybody yet.
Yeah.
Right.
That means you're really unable to do that. And I really think that hampers things. And I don't spend it. The M&A side of it is not my strength. Mine's operations, and that's not my world. But I am to me, that'd be somewhat of a red flag. I will have to say, if I've got an owner that really wants to keep it tight to his vest that this is happening, I don't know. It sets off a little bit of an alarm for me because if you have the intention, if we're going through the process and it is your intention to sell this company and you're not saying anything to the rest of the team, why? If this is something we're just kind of, it's cursory talks and we're going back, that's one thing. But if we're down to brass tacks at this point in time and the intention is we're going to move forward with this, I would think that I have the ability to at least be on site. The owner at this point in time should be able to say, we're in talks. This is something we're looking at. And maybe we've had some conversation so that the ownership has the some of the specifics on how they might want to approach it with their staff, because maybe they just don't understand how to do it.
I believe most of the times the owners or sellers have concerns about whether they do the right communication process. People's reactions are unpredictable, and they say, well, who knows what new management or new ownership is going to do with the company. I may lose my job. If I have the opportunity, I'm going to move to another company, and then start creating kind of some unrest, right, among the people. I would say that's one of the concerns of the sellers, rather than saying, well, this is a situation and this is a new ownership, everything is going to be fine, let them talk to you, earn your trust once the operation is complete. The other is that sometimes during due diligence you still have chances that the deal falls through, and so I understand sellers have concerns, but
yeah,
but the idea, I would say, Lance, is probably the same. Try to gain as much information or knowledge of the culture of the company, either before or right after.
Right.
Brian, well, for a small company, probably interviewing all the employees is better. For a large company, you have to probably be selective. Probably at some level, probably 25 or 50 people, you cannot interview them all. But it's interesting. Yeah, definitely talking to each one of them in a formal basis is key, and not only making them feel comfortable, but listened, right? At least they can express, their ideas. I would personally like to understand, for example, how they see their delineation of responsibilities, their accountability, and other people's accountability. For example, I have seen managers, companies that are being, purchased, they acknowledge companies are making money, and we don't feel, happy about it, right? So they're very, very, responsible. It's not like, hey, this is a problem of the owner, I just get my salary and that's it, right?
Yeah. Could I just ask, we got a lot of acquisition entrepreneurs on the call, and it's no mystery that they all have business experience and acumen too, but making this a group interaction, I'd love to hear from people like yourself jump in. As you guys are talking about culture, I would love to hear some of your guys' opinions just about understanding that process post-acquisition and your take on it, and see if there's some strategies that you can come up with or take away from this call. I think that would be very beneficial.
Well, I already like the questions that Brian brought up. What do you like about the management? What do we do well? I asked those same questions in the same roundabout area. Probably not as positive as that, but you really do want to get the insight. And sometimes they have multiple ideas on efficiency or improvement, and you may be able to give them, empower them by taking some of them as suggestions that you can improve on. Just like Brian said, the young kid may have a lot of influence, a lot of ideas. He may have come from somewhere else where they do something very efficient. I've hired people from other companies, and with their experience, and just to kind of steal those ideas. So I agree to that. Those questions coming in pretty quickly, and just getting your trust and confidence in the employees, so they're empowered to do what you hope they can do by themselves.
It's a good word.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had to do it recently. I've done it. My experience is now dated, probably 10 years ago. But for me, when I have those initial meetings, it's really more about rapport building. I view it as a two-stage process. I'm not going to do that for the entry line person, certainly, depending on the size of the company. But a lot of that is just rapport building. If I can get them comfortable with that first meeting, I'm going to let time go on a little bit longer to nurture that, and then ask them the more loaded questions. If you were king for a day, if you own this company for a day, what would be the top things on your agenda you'd like to see change? And my experience has been doing two of them, is that the prior owners never empowered their people to be smart, to do the things, to think beyond their position. And my philosophy is totally different. I'd like to empower them and give them the understanding of why. Hey, that's a fantastic idea, but if I were to do it, have you considered this, that, and the other thing? Well, the owners never let them know that, so they build up resentment in their current position. And so I have to unpeel that a few times, and to get them to say, okay, now I want to empower you. So come up with their ideas and understand what those issues are. And what's interesting is you get a totally different flavor from people who didn't have that background and information, and they just conjured up in their head, well, this is messed up, I would have done this. Once you empower them with that different perspective, they go, wow, now that I understand that, I'd do it this way. And that's worked well. But obviously you've got to limit your number of interviews. You can't do that for everybody.
It's huge. I'm thinking in regards of, as you guys are implementing this through an acquisition process, you step that same philosophy up with a general manager being onboarded to that business, incentivizing them to run that. Is that based off of the mission, vision, values? Is there a flywheel approach? How does he know to do that same thing that you're doing, right? Because what you want to do is really become more semi-passive in that business, or let it run with the people that are in charge. Is that something that you guys have experience in passing off as far as building culture, refining process? Would love to hear a little bit about that too, as people are wanting to be more semi-passive in these engagements. How do you pass off that same knowledge, right, to those other people that are leading? What's been some kind of touch points there? Maybe Brian, you could lead that off as well. And you're on mute too. Sorry, Brian.
One of the things I was going to follow up on, something that Daniel had said right when we kind of started this conversation, which is important. On one of the questions to ask is, what is your role and responsibilities? That's an important question to ask all of these people. I really believe that's one of the most important after we ask some of these, where we do well, what could we improve on? Because you may or may not be surprised how often you hear, this is what my role is. I also do this. I also do that. And as you talk to all these people, you start to hear some overlap, or maybe you find some gaps in here. And then you start to get this picture of, we don't have clear delineation of who does what. You start to understand right away that we've got some procedural issues. This is the, how you're going to uncover a lot of this. So, to me, that's another one of those things that's really important on how you start off. Now, to your point there, Lance, what specifically were you looking? I'm sorry, I was writing down an answer to another question that popped up on the screen here as you were asking that last piece.
Yeah, no, I think everybody wants to have a great diversification to their portfolio, acquiring one of these businesses. But how do you pass off that vision to the general manager, right? There's these stories that the general manager runs off, does business on the side, isn't, wanting to accept the mission or vision. And how do you really get on board with a GM or somebody who's leading that position apart from yourself now to be able to build that culture and framework? How have you passed that off to people in your ventures before?
Well, I guess it's dependent upon, is this GM sticking around? One, right? Is this a situation where this person's staying or not? Is this something that's going to be an earn out and a handoff after some period of time? Trying to come to grips with an actual mission, vision, value is something that, I think is going to take a little bit of time on an off-site visit, truthfully, because it is something that most people just simply gloss over. When you ask, what is the mission for your business? It's to make money. No, that's not what the mission of the vision is. And then really that, again, it's something, how many people, particularly from the trades, but across all business sectors, don't ever bother to put together a business plan, really. They just run by the seat of their pants and they move forward and they do what they're reactive in everything that they do. So having the time to actually sit down and have that discussion about what is our mission first and foremost. And it may take hours to hammer it out. And I expect oftentimes it will take hours to hammer it out. But by the time you have that done and you roll into what are our values, those become easier. Hopefully you've got strong values. To me, that is one of the things that is really important from the acquisition side, I believe. If you don't have a strong culture there, you've got your work cut out for you. I don't care how efficient that company appears to be, how profitable they appear to be. If it all hinges on one person, the owner that may be leaving, or it hinges on another person that's retiring, you've got some real issues there, and that has to be part of your due diligence. It's just tremendously important. So the conveyance of how do you carry that forward, it's something that I really believe is going to be an off-site meeting that you better allocate an entire day for, and make sure that you get on the same page, and that you guys really understand what's happening with this, what the true vision is. If you can't align very quickly on it, all of these other things are going to be ineffective. That's the foundation. That's the basis that you build everything upon.
What is the difference, Brian, if you as a new owner, let's say in my case, do not have a specific industry experience, right? Or if you have it, what would be the main differences during this process of onboarding and, having these conversations with the employees and then talking to you on matters that you really know about or you do not know much?
I approach it the same way, whether I do or I don't. And that is, I'm here to learn. First and foremost, I'm here to learn. If you're not growing, you're dying. You're learning all the time. And it's not just lip service. I absolutely and utterly believe that. I am here to learn. You're going to learn if you're open to it and you're asking questions and listening, which again, that's just a skill set. Work that muscle, folks. If you can't ask questions and listen, and actually listen, not think about what I'm going to say next, but listen to what the person's saying, you're doing yourself and everybody around you a disservice. You have to exercise that muscle, really understand what people have to say, because too many people are, let me talk. I got a lot to say. Here's what I want to say. I'm here to learn. And that really has to come across you have to be very genuine on that. And as soon as they get the feeling that, okay, I can see that, I'm here to learn, and I'm here to help where I can. I do have experience. I've got specific experience in this industry. Here's my background. I'm hoping I can help out. I don't have specific experience in this industry. I've got experience in this industry or that industry. I think it's interesting. There's some similarities that I would never have considered. It's trying to find some commonality and some common ground. But first and foremost, I really believe it's important for them to understand that I am here to learn first and foremost. I'm also here to help. And that's what I'm concentrating on primarily. It's not where can I improve our efficiencies right off the bat? Where can I increase our revenues? What can I do to bump the bottom line? Those things are operational, that they're going to come with time. But first and foremost, it's making sure that you get started off on the right foot so that there's a level of trust. If you move beyond that too quickly, again, you're going to have problems. It's the foundational piece of getting this started off correctly.
Yes, building trust is not a task that you can accomplish in a short period of time. Like no one is going to, give you the keys of their house overnight, right? To let you do some work inside the house. They're gonna trust you on some little, even if they have something important to say, they'll say little. And eventually, as you build trust, the conversations will go deeper and deeper, right?
Yeah. And I don't know that, we could talk about this the entire meeting, and I'm sure people will say, yeah, great. I get it. But I just can't state it strongly enough that if you can't get started off on the correct foot there, you're going to have issues, because you absolutely have to have these people's buy-in, that staff's buy-in on what's going on there, that you are actually there to help and to learn. And that is my role first and foremost. When are we going to start making all these changes? I don't know. I don't know what changes we need to make, right? We're asking questions at this point in time. I'm not here to tell anybody what we're going to do. I'm asking questions on what should we do. And that comes to my point, in this first question, that was, what are the three most important operational tasks for new owners who acquired a business? What we've just talked about, that's task number one for me. Number two, once we've got some buy-in and people are on the same page, and we've created, offsite with ownership, mission, vision, values, and I feel we've got alignment, then it is getting together with the leadership team, the management team, and we may or may not have one, right? This may be a dictatorship. Who knows what this thing's run like? But we need to create a leadership team who's our GMs here, our divisional operations, who's our controller, who are the people that make decisions on a daily basis. Let's make sure we create a leadership team. And that's an ongoing thing as well too, making sure that you have a team that has regular meetings, a cadence to it, that people can communicate effectively. It's a wonderful thing to see a leadership team be built and come together, particularly when you've got a company that never had one. And that also takes time. But through that process, the things that I would like to do as a secondary to address that question is I'd love to go through and whiteboard procedure. I love to go through our process. Tell me how we do this. How do we do a service call? How are we dealing with membership agreements? How are we dealing with our inventory management? And whiteboard this. And it may take hours to go through. We got all sorts of time. We're in no rush on this, right? I want to hear, where are our issues? What are our problems? Where could we do this differently? And again, I'm always asking questions on it. I'm not telling, I'm asking questions. As we begin to do this, they're going to answer for you. They're going to improve the model. They're going to say, yeah, we've always had an issue here. We just don't know what to do. All right, maybe that's my opportunity to step in and say, in the past, we've done something like this, and then step back. And here it goes. And the conversation goes for another 10 minutes and they're bouncing ideas back and forth. And you just kind of, and you're not having to drive this, this meeting. You're empowering these people. So, as we get through that, we're identifying some of the deficiencies, some of the opportunities. That's a huge piece. And then from that, the third piece that I think is important that we put in is leveraging KPIs and technology. Most of these places really aren't going to be using any type of metrics or KPIs. And I think that they're just absolutely imperative to successful operation of a business. It takes all the subjective nature out of things. One of these other questions on here is, what do you do to get employees, particularly old school employees, to embrace change? Introduce them to what a KPI is, and it seems like such a simple thing, but when you walk through, listen, I've got problems with, these guys. We're trying to get everybody out in the mornings. We do new construction as part of what we do. We've got a whole division that does rough-in duct work, and man, it seems like these guys clock in at 7, and maybe 3 days out of the week, it's 8 o'clock before the last guys get out of here loaded and ready to hit the road. I don't know how to deal with that. All right. Well, we could put a KPI into effect that basically let's make it a simple one. Let's just say that we have a time we're out by 7:20, fully loaded and ready to go. If we're out by 7:20, we got a 1. If we miss it, we got a 0. If somebody comes back to grab something they forgot, or somebody has to go to a parts supply house to grab something that we don't have, that's a 0. We don't do it, that's a 1. A perfect score for the week's 10, right? We'll deal with a 9, meaning one day out of the week we're late because for some reason or another we couldn't get off right on time, or we missed something. I'll deal with that, but not 2. 80% doesn't work for me. That's no more subjective. That's not standing on guys saying, come on. I've just got a leadership board now. I've got a scoreboard that shows team A, B, C, and D, and I let them choose their names. Everybody likes a little competition, and it's visible right there. We got 10s, 9, and a 7. Everybody calls out, what's going on with a 7? Nobody likes to be in last place. That's an effective and efficient way for me to be able to manage with KPIs right off the bat. And as soon as an old school guy sees that, and that's super easy to grasp, right? I'm not recreating the wheel here. I'm not putting some really in-depth grad school type of process into place. This is simple, makes sense. And they see that work, they buy into it. So for me, having those KPIs and making sure people understand how they work and how to create them, is something that's really important, and it's transformative from an operational standpoint.
What about making them feel comfortable about, well, it's better to have a 7 and then find out the way to improve to 9 or 10 than cheating and getting your supplies without, the person, in charge of the KPIs knowing. So you look like you have a 9 when you don't. to make it clear that's not acceptable, but the other situation is something to work out, and what those kind of things also, because some people that never had KPIs before and are old school may be afraid of being in the spot, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's it again too. That's a point of saying, listen, geez, well, what happens if we get a 7? Then that's a place we've got a room for improvement, right? At least we're measuring it. At least we know we're at a 7 instead of just, yeah, these guys are late a lot. What does that tell me? It really doesn't tell me anything other than we need to make some improvements. How do I measure it? Measure what matters. You're not going to be able to improve something that you don't have clear visibility into. So find an effective way of measuring what's important to you. And that's something you just can't stress strongly enough. So, and really, that's, again, where KPIs are so effective, because they're simple. You get a lot of, you'll see some of these KPIs, the way that they're created and addressed, and it becomes some type of accounting equation. I'm not a fan of those. I'm a fan of, like I just said, listen, you're on time, it's a 1. You're not, it's a 0. You come back for something, it's a 0. You don't, it's a 1. It's a perfect score, is a 10. Everybody can do that math. It's simple. But to start off with, what does success look like? What are we measuring for? Well, I want these guys out on time. Okay, great.
So
I ask a question to expand on that, or dive into it, I guess. I was curious, like, if you mentioned that, you tell the team we have plenty of time. If it's taking hours or days to figure this stuff out, that's okay. We're not in a rush. I would assume that if these are people who are already working there, they probably tend to think they're busy most of the time. They probably aren't saying, yeah, we got plenty of time, we're not busy. So the first part is, how do you deal with them saying, well, we got emergencies, we got stuff we got to do. We can't be taking days away from the business to figure this stuff out. And then the follow-on question is, if there are people who work there, and if they could have been doing this stuff, they could have had a mission and vision, they could have had KPIs, they could have figured stuff out, but they didn't. It feels like it implies that if you come in and try to improve things, but you try to get the team to improve things, you try to grow a management team, they might not do it right. You might be listening to them talk and watching them go off on a rabbit hole that is a mistake. Like, how quickly do you jump in and tell them, like, that's not going to work, don't bother with that? Or do you give them like some slack where they can make mistakes, and you try to just mentor them through the mistakes really fast? So like, it's their thing and not your thing. Like, how do you deal with the fact that they were there before, they were doing things before, and you come in and in theory we're making things better, but they may not work that way or be ready for it exactly?
Well, that's to the first part of your question. I think that when I say that we've got time, I don't necessarily mean that we can monopolize their hours in a day, in a work day. I'm more along the lines of, we don't need to solve all of your problems on Tuesday. It may take us a month or 2 to work through all of this, meeting an hour a week, if that's all that time allows. It's more to the point that we're going to make sure that we prioritize kind of that Pareto methodology, 80-20 rule. We can take care of isolating the largest issues and attacking those first, or more to the point, let's grab the low-hanging fruit of those issues that are really pertinent or real pain points. That's what we'll focus on, but knowing that we don't have to eat the entire elephant right at one sitting. We've got time to work this out. And really, if you get some success on the low-hanging fruit and they see this start to happen, the wheel starts to turn anyway. You can see the light bulb going, okay, I got it. And things begin to happen individually or in groups, to where you can see that they're using some of these skills and methodologies to be able to solve some of their own issues. How do you take care of meetings where you're giving them the latitude to make mistakes? And if they go down a rabbit hole, you're a teacher. You're there listening and watching. And if you see it get off the rails, if they go from solving problem A to within 90 seconds, they're on to problem C that nobody's even brought up, then I will simply say, let's table that. I got it written down here. I understand that's an issue, but let's get back to A and let's work on that. If they bring something up that it's not going to work, then I'm going to interject and say, typically, I've been involved where we tried to do something like that. Here's the issues that we had. I'm not going to say inherently that this doesn't work. I'm just going to bring up, here's the issues that we had, allow them to see where, okay, yeah, that's probably right, and redirect them. I do as little telling as possible. And again, that really comes with asking questions. If you're telling, in my opinion, you're doing it wrong. Nobody likes to be told anything, right? People like to come up to their own conclusions on things. They like to be able to be empowered and come up with their own conclusions, their own success. They will have accountability if they do. If I tell you, I want you to do it, and I want you to do it this way, and you don't agree, 9 times out of 10, you may have somebody that just says, all right, I know it's wrong, and I'm going to show you it's wrong. I'm going to do it wrong. And then when it's broke and this goes off the rails, that's on you. That's because I told somebody. If I asked how to do this and we came to an agreement, now they're empowered because they're accountable to their solution. And to me, that's an important way to approach it. So it's not monopolizing time. Yes, everybody's got, they're busy during the day. You've got to find time to have dedicated meetings to go over these things. But it's just, we have time to solve the problems, I guess.
Very good. Very good questions. Thank you. So, in a recap, you said about understanding the culture, talking to people. You also said understanding the processes. What is what we do, how we do it, right? Why we do it, and then understanding the metrics. How do we measure what we do?
And if that's all you did, and you do it well, you're light years ahead. You really are. A lot of times I think people feel like they have to come in and they have to make massive overhauls. My God, the inventory system's a train wreck. We're going to gut this thing. We're going to sit down and work on this thing. That's disruptive to start with. You have to be very careful the level of disruption you cause. This thing is running. It may have been running for, we just got involved in a business here that started in 1967. It's 3rd generation family business. You have to tread lightly on that, right? To start with, there's a strong culture there. If this is a third, and I know that before I talk to anybody, if this is a 3rd generation company, I know that there's some type of culture there that's endured for 50 years at this point in time. I'm very interested to have these conversations and ask people, tell me about this. Tell me why do you work here? What do you like about this? How long have you been here? What are your roles? I'm genuinely interested to hear more about this because, that's a massive success story to me that this small business has been around for 50 years. So the culture thing, again, it's such a strong component, and it's something that you really need to pay attention to in building. Coming in and disrupting for operational efficiencies is, in my mind, a mistake, because when you step into this thing and you begin to gut it, you begin to make changes, particularly if you're not asking questions. You just say, hey, I see the problem. I'm a smart guy. I see the problem. I'm going to fix this right off the bat. And you don't get buy-in from everybody. You're playing with fire at that point in time, because now you've set yourself up into a role about I am the king, I'm the authoritative figure here, this is the way we're going to do things. I'm not interested in your opinion because I know the answer. I don't need your insight on it. So even if you know what the problem is and you know what the solution is, it's more important, I believe, this is the way I operate, to get them to come to that conclusion with you, to guide them to that conclusion so that there's accountability.
Otherwise, they will say, hey, it didn't work. I did exactly what you told me to. So it's not my problem, it's your problem.
Yeah.
Anybody else got input on that? I'd love to hear from the group as we finalize. Anybody else got input? We're going to take the silence as a no, maybe.
Yeah.
I agree with everything Brian said, because I unfortunately have done it the other way, where I get some great advice from a coach. Here's how we're going to do things. We're going to be so much better. And you walk in and you just tell everybody how it's happening. And that never goes well, even if they see the positives of it. But if you present it as, here's a system that works, that's going to be more efficient, that's going to help, and these are the problems you presented to me, this is what's going to help all of us with this, and that'll allow a better system, a better process, and it empowers them to be part of the decision because it was a problem for them also. So you came up with the solution, not only you, but you presented a solution to the problem that everybody had. And a lot of times they already had a bit of an offer for the same solution. And you're helping the process rather than, I think I wrote it down, you're guiding rather than demanding. And we all know as soon as you demand, you get rebellion, you get fighting back, you get problems, slow, everything's a problem. So those are things that I have done wrong, and I like how Brian worded it.
And there's nuances to those individual businesses. I mean, you may well know what the solution is here, and you may have, this may be your industry of specialization, and you've got vast knowledge to it. That doesn't mean you've got the same level of experience at that company in that specific role. You've got a person that's been at that company in a specific role for 20 years. I got news for you. They know more than you do about it. I don't care what your experience is. They know more than you do. So to ignore that or to exert your influence over the top without their input is a mistake. You need to empower those individuals, and it's my managing methodology of prior businesses I've owned and many, many mistakes I've made over the years. The older I've gotten, the more humble I've become, because I was a real smart guy when I was younger, right? I'm not nearly as smart now. So I am very interested in listening to what people have to say, because isn't that the whole idea at the end of this, is that whatever this period of time that you've set for yourself, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it takes to get this thing up and running, that this thing is humming on its own, and you're there to make sure if there are issues that need your input, that you're there to give input. But really 99% of this is just moving the flywheel spinning, things are humming along, because you've got people that are empowered. You've got people that understand how to attack processes. You've got people that understand how to whiteboard, what the problems are. You got people that understand how to create metrics, how to actually focus on what am I really trying to fix here? What is the problem? Not what are all of the symptoms, but what's really the problem here? What can we fix? How do we measure it? How do we effectively determine if this is actually happening? Once you've created that culture where people understand how to do that, you've built the perfect machine. This thing's going to hum whether you're there or not. I mean, to me, that's the beauty of it, is at the point in time where you say, hey, I'm out on vacation for the month of September. I'm headed off to the Colorado mountains to go backpack the Colorado Trail for a month. I'm excited. And everybody goes, that's great. Good time. Send pictures. I want to see it. And you don't worry about what's going on while you're gone, because you've got a team there that's running this thing. So when we're talking about operational efficiency, and I'm sorry if this for a lot of people doesn't sound like operations, because they're looking for specific things like how do I really manage inventory? How do I make sure that we're getting 6 calls instead of 5 a day? What are the small tips and tricks? Those are things that you're going to develop once the system's in place and things are running smoothly. Trying to put the flourishes on your frosting when the cake is just garbage, it doesn't work. If you don't have the foundation built and you don't have the team built, the rest of it's nonsense. It's just not going to work. So, you're going to have a meeting with Tatiana here. It sounds like is one of the next individuals that speaks from Snowball. I love Tatiana. She's great. People and culture. When I came into Snowball, I had a hard time early on. I was like, well, what is people and culture? I don't understand. Is it human resources? No, it's more. But you take care of payroll and things like their problem. But yeah, we do, but there's more. It's people and culture. More to the point, it's culture. Where do we want this to go? What does this look like? What are our mission, vision, values? It is really having a person in place that's the underpinnings of that team and how it moves. And that is such a part of operational efficiency. And it's something that people really do just gloss over because they're so enamored with this booklet of KPIs they got, this new podcast they just listened to on how you can squeeze an extra penny out of the day. Those are all things that are wonderful to look towards implementing once this machine is running. But you need to make sure that you've got an empowered group of individuals that can solve their own problems before you get into those types of things. And again, if we've got into really whiteboarding and they understand how to break down flow charts of processes and procedures, and if they understand how to build KPIs and how to manage to them, and really you shouldn't have more than 2 to 3 KPIs per individual. There's no reason to have 7 or 10 or 12. That's just overwhelming. Measure what matters, get the few things that really matter. If you do that, you've got 90% of the battle taken care of right there.
How would you recognize, Brian, if you have gone in the right direction, have taken a few positive steps? What would be kind of an indicator for you you're going in the right direction, or you're not, indicator that you're going in the wrong direction?
A lot of it is, watching to see how are people conducting themselves and carrying themselves around there. If you see people that are excited and motivated and they're working on solving problems, that's an indicator that we're headed in the right direction. And that may not mean that we're seeing increases in revenue or we're seeing increases in our net profit. Those things can definitely be secondary. Again, we can have all sorts of reasons, capital expenditures or whatever it may be, or just refocusing on direction that we're taking for our business objectives. But it's, do I have an engaged team that's actually taking to heart what we've been talking about? As well, are they following what we've determined is our core mission and values? We're dealing with a situation right now with one of our acquisition companies where we had just finished doing mission, vision, values with these guys. And we have a situation where we were theoretically looking to terminate somebody, but we really didn't have a clear reason. We just had suspicion to it. And there was this meeting with the leadership team about, how are we going to manage it? And really what happened is we stepped in and said, listen, we talked last week about mission, vision, values. One of our values was that we support our teammates. Are we supporting this individual? Silence. Do we know, or are we just supposing that we have an issue? Well, we think. Are we supporting them? No. What do we need to do? Okay. Big reset, big step back. We're looking at this from a different direction. And then that all comes from mission, vision, values on. And again, that may not sound operational, but if you don't have a cohesive team where everybody's rowing in the same direction, you're not going anywhere.
What other values did you have besides the supporting of the team?
We had supporting the team. We had, doing quality work. We had supporting our community, giving back to our community. It's one of those things. We have shoulder season, right? Especially for HVAC. What do we do in the shoulder season? We haven't really built up our membership agreements. We've got that period of time before we're out there doing furnace work that, we're shy on business. We're bleeding revenue. What do we do to increase revenue? What do we do to increase revenue? It may not be that we're necessarily increasing revenue from a specific thing. I like to use it for training. I also like to do it for giving back to the community. I invite the team to what can we do for this community that we're in, that we're a member of, and that we are dependent upon to make our business successful. Is there something we can do to give back? When we begin to focus on things like that and we're visible in the community doing things like that, it might just be one or two things over the course of a week or two in September, October, whenever. It's a feel good for all the employees and it's visible to the community. It's tremendous advertising, right? Does it add to the bottom line of something we're doing? No, not at that specific moment. Does it over time? Absolutely. Through engagement with the community and visibility, as well as having employees embrace just that. We give back and they see it and they feel it. It's not just lip service. You'll see a lot of those. Here's our values. And they'll list them out. They'll list them out because they got it off of Google. They looked at a couple other companies. Yeah, this is what it is. But they never actually cater towards it. I always bring that up with Tylenol. Back when that whole Tylenol thing where there was the poison, the Tylenol bottles, and we had this whole issue. What were they going to do about it? It was very easy for them to actually sit down and take a look at what to do, because they had their mission statement carved in stone in the entrance to the headquarters there. And it said, we will abide by our consumers. We will do the right thing. We pull them from the shelves. Is it going to cost us a ton of money? Absolutely. Did it? You bet. Did they do the right thing? And did they come back from? Of course they did. But it was very easy because they had that written down and they were all on the same page. They understood it. It was a core vision, a core value.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I liked all of those. Thanks.
Very good.
Or do we have?
Sure. Go ahead, Matt. Yes.
So am I hearing? I'm sort of trying to back up and figure out, like, as owner, right, as new owner, I'm sort of hearing that your biggest challenge might be, I don't know, sort of like chilling out, like waiting and sort of making a hole for everybody who's there to come in and fill in, build a business, and then like not screwing it up. Am I hearing the gist of that correctly? Or is there another thing that, like, what's your biggest challenge as the new owner? What's the hardest thing as that role? Not as the other roles you're overseeing, getting them to make their KPIs, getting them to figure out their roles and responsibilities. What's your biggest challenge as the new owner?
I think it's exactly that. It's not screwing it up, right?
No,
I mean, you come in to buy this business because you're enamored with some portion of it. It's in the right area. They've got a good reputation. They've got long tenured staff. They've got operational excellence, whatever it may be that brought you to decide that this is the one that you want to invest in and put your time and effort into. The last thing that I'd want to do is come drop a bomb into the middle of this thing by gutting it, starting over. I mean, I bought it for a reason. It's trying not to step on yourself. It's exactly that. And that is the biggest thing to me. It's restraining yourself from that desire to jump in and just, work 90-hour weeks to really get this thing up and going. You can work and you can lead by example from the front, but you need to make sure that they understand that you're there leading from the front, hand in hand with them, along with you, that you are not, this is not some type of dictatorship, or this is not some type of thing where I'm going to be the visible leader and I never need everybody else to step in line behind me. It's that you really are a cohesive team, and that you're here to learn, you're here to help where you can, but it's a cohesive team that works together. And then that is your most difficult thing to do, because some people, it's a skill. Some people have a really difficult time communicating with people. They have a difficult time stepping back and listening. They have a difficult time not just jumping down somebody's throat because they don't agree with what's being said, or they feel that they've got the answer and they can solve it. Yeah, I hear it. Here's how we're going to do it. It's difficult oftentimes for people not to do that. And that is really, to me, that's the biggest thing you're going to have to learn is being able to step back, listen, and have some patience to it. Because if you bought a good company, there's no need to go in and make these massive changes right off the bat.
Brian, a question on the 10% of the, or 20% we said we wanted to touch on, pre-acquisition. What are the kind of things from the operations point of view that if you see during the business analysis or due diligence that will make you walk away from a deal?
That would make me want to walk away from an operational standpoint of things I'm seeing, is if we really don't have any systems in place, if we're just absolutely and totally dependent upon individuals to solve issues. And I think we've all seen that. We've got a business that's absolutely and utterly dependent upon the leader. There is no business, there's just John. And when John retires, it just crumbles around him because he had all the contacts, everything ran through him. If I don't see that I've got operational efficiencies that work through people systems, that's a huge red flag. If we're absolutely dependent upon an individual, not a position, if we're dependent upon John and Sally, not the service manager and the controller, then we've got problems. And I hope that makes sense on the distinction, right? John as the service manager is one thing, but John's a person. If John leaves, we just can't fill his shoes because he was so much more than a service manager. He did all of these things. That's a problem. It has to be something where I actually see that we've got something in place that's working. If I have key points of failure through individual people, that's my red flag.
Yeah, so I've heard that if you have a great I'll say process in place and procedures for people to follow to achieve excellence, and they are clear enough for someone who is not familiar, with the tasks to follow and to still be successful, then you have a great company, because no matter who's coming in, they will be able to follow. Let's say, for example, a person who goes out to a house to do a repair and follow, let's say, the very basic, hey, your vehicle should be clean, you should introduce yourself, you should be respectful, remove your shoes, let the owner know when you're taking a break, keep them informed of what you're doing, those kind of things. Rather than knowing what to do, if they can read them, then you have another person and it's going to follow the same excellence standard, right? So the excellence comes from the processes and procedures you have in place for people to easily follow, right? So you leave very little to the person to come up with on their personal, soft skills, right? Hey, greet and meet the person, when give them your number to call you back in case they find anything or, whatever, right?
And I think in your due diligence, that should be a way that you pose that question, maybe, is we understand what would happen if I lost a service GM. I mean, we can see that, right? We can visualize that. We've sat down and we've researched. If we don't have experience in the HVAC industry, we've researched what that looks like. We understand the processes and how important that is. If we lost a service manager, what would that do? Well, it would affect this, and this. The question would be, what happens if I lose John? What happens if I lose Sally? What happens if I lose Kevin? Because if you find, and we had one of these again with an acquisition company where we had an individual who worked 7 days a week. That was their life. And they had their fingers in everything. Everything ran through that person. They weren't even on the leadership team. Well, they didn't have a leadership team, but they weren't in that position. If we would have lost that person, that place would have crumbled, absolutely crumbled. And that's because, we didn't have strong procedure in place, or, we may have thought we did, but we had one person who was such a key, key personnel for that tied into so many things, that was a red flag right off the bat. We have to find a way to pull this person back, take their fingers out of all these pieces and not piss them off. Right. I mean, because if they would have left right off the bat, we'd have been struggling. We'd have been swimming. So, that's absolutely important as well too.
Very good. Very good. Thanks, Brian. Guys, any other questions? We're at the top of the hour. I believe the conversation went just, flying. It has been very good. And
I'll leave one more thing if we,
yes,
just to say, if we don't get any more. Having something like this is great. Having a resource, having a group, you can bounce ideas back and forth. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I believe any new owner, existing owner, long-term owner should consistently do is you're always learning. And one of the best ways you can learn is get yourself involved in ownership groups. And whether it's, it might not even be the same industry, it doesn't matter. Get yourself involved in a leadership council or on a board or something where you're able to get information back and forth. Beyond that, find out if you've got any companies in your specific industry, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, whatever it may be that you're getting into, that are solid, well-respected, well-run, long-term established companies. Reach out to the owner and find out if you can go pick their brain, come out on site. I'm going out to Lee's Air here in Fresno on Friday. It's owned by Tom Howard, who is the VP of customer experience for Service Titan. Service Titan hired him because he was just a stud. The guy just did tremendous work. He built great companies. And I'm going to go walk his site because I want to see operational excellence in person. I want to see this phenomenal inventory system he's built. And his point, he doesn't care who wants to come and see it. He's got competition's competition. I got all sorts of places to get business. I'm confident in what I do. If you want to come and pick my brain, I'm more than happy to share it. And you guys will be surprised about how many opportunities there are like that out there. I encourage you to go out there and do that. Find those companies and those individuals and go and do your R&D. Those individuals will share ideas. They'll tell you mistakes they've made. They're going to, shorten your curve tremendously. That's a resource that's something you just can't pass up. And that's something, again, that I didn't do early on. And it's something that I make part of my trips. When I'm headed out someplace, I'm going out for a week to go visit somebody, some company, I'm researching to see if there's somebody I can visit on one of those afternoons to go see that in action, because it's that important to me. I'm being exposed. Do that because of this, and this. Great idea. Write it down.
Perfect. Great advice. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate it. Guys, any other, questions so we can, wrap up and let Brian go for the day. Lance, if you're still there, want to say any additional comments about next week or so? I may not be here with you next week. I'm traveling, and Wednesday next week I may be flying back to Houston. So we'll see how that goes. But there will be a call anyways with Tad. Okay. Probably Lance will help me, or Kyla. Yes.
Yeah, no, phenomenal. I think a lot of this has to do with character. I mean, how you look at people, how you deal with them. The overall consensus is you can either be proud and say, I'm going to hire a GM, I'm going to get this thing operation, I can get an ERP in there, I could get CRM, I could do all this. But hands down, the biggest factor here is culture and being able to be a great leader, to have a great business so you can actually implement these things and have that thing run 90%, or 100% without you eventually, to be able to step away. But it all has to do with people. And we always come back to that. So Brian, your information was so valuable. Thanks for sharing. I think we had who was here too, asking great questions. I think it's just a good conversation, because I speak with hundreds of acquisition entrepreneurs that want to go down this route, but a lot of them say, I don't got time. I want to just be more passive. I've got an investment. I might have a partner who can do that. But the key here is really culture and developing that basis of trust and rapport. So this conversation has been very beneficial. We're always here to answer any additional questions. I think Tony was on the call, or anybody who has some input, or if you have questions about Acquira in general, we'd love to hear from you, reach out. We're always eager to learn as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much for the time. Looking forward to next week. Good luck, Daniel, and happy connecting, everybody.
Yep. Thank you very much,
guys.
Lance.
Best of luck
Thank
to
you,
everybody.
Brian. Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
everyone. Bye-bye.